Good morning. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of the Hampton Bays Water District Commissioners on this first day of April 2021. Please rise if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
all. Thank you. Please be seated. I know some of the other Zoom meetings, I watch them, they do the pledge sitting down. It's weird to me. You stand up. If you're capable, you stand for the pledge. I don't know. Anyways, Sunday, would you, do we need to do the hearing notice as well? Do you need to read that? You do, I think.
But this is a scheduled meeting that you schedule in your organizational meeting, so there's not a hearing notice that's
I thought this was a special meeting of the Water District's commissioners, not a scheduled one.
I don't know. Let me look. I thought this was.
I have it as a special Hampton Bays.
They're all special, Jay. I'm sorry.
No, this is a special.
You are absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. This is a very special one, and I'm sorry. There was a couple extra pages in my folder I did not see.
So why don't we start by having you read the notice and then call the roll?
Certainly. Members of the Town Board, special meeting notice, Thursday, April 1st, 2021 at 10 a.m. Please be advised that the Town Board, in its capacity as Commissioners of the Hampton Bays Water District, will convene a special meeting via teleconference on Thursday, April 1st, 2021 at 10 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Award and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Cave Service, Inc. for GAC changeout for the Hampton Bays Water District. Jay Schneiderman, Supervisor, Town of Southampton, dated March 29th, 2021.
All right.
Schneiderman.
I am present.
Councilwoman Lofstad.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
And Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
And Councilman Scivone.
Present.
Excellent.
All right. So let me, I think the first thing on the agenda is public portion. So let me see if anybody is here to speak in public portion.
There are a few people here. I just need them to raise their hands. They'd like to speak.
Not in the main section.
No.
I don't see public portion on this agenda.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's on the agenda.
Is it? I don't have it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's here.
It's section 2, John, right before the resolution. All right, I'm not seeing anybody for public.
There are 3 people in the waiting room, but I wouldn't let them in unless
Who are those people?
Jessica Insulaco, I have a Marty, and I have a Tom Comm'r.
Two of those are for the work session presentation, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Jessica as well do it, but Marty Petrovic and Tom Comm'r are.
Jessica can raise her hand if she wants to come in, and I see no hand, so.
Okay, and we're trying to get John Collins in, so when he
Yeah,
shows.
as soon as he comes in, I'll let him in.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to close public portion.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we'll go to the agenda. There's only one item. It's, I believe the sponsor is Councilman Scivone, who's the liaison. Tommy John, I guess, why don't you go ahead and make a motion and we'll get a second on the resolution and then we can debate it and hopefully John will help answer our question.
Okay, and Councilman Martell is also the liaison for the Water District. This is Town Board Resolution 354 of 2020 to award and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with EVAC Service Incorporated for a GAC changeout for the Hampton Bays Water District. and I'd like to make a motion to approve this item.
For a second? Seconded by Councilman Martell. So, on the motion, and I don't know really who this is directed at. The bid was, had a number of different components. There were things that were Alt 1, Alt 2, and Alt 3, and I wasn't sure what those three alternates were. And then there were staging of 2021, 22, 23, and I was trying to figure out what we actually were getting and why this particular company was the low bidder, when in several categories other bids were lower than them. But not everybody bid on all portions, so I just wanted just a better understanding of the bid. So, like for
I think Jay, I think John is on. He just texted me, said he's on. So whenever you
All
guys
right.
begin to let him in.
Oh, good. So, now let me just sort of lay this out a little bit. So these are the granular activated carbon filters at field 1, and they're reaching end of life, and we need to change out the filtration medium because of the time sensitivity. And I got a call from James and said, James was concerned about waiting any longer. So we did this special meeting so that we could expedite this. And we had some conversations about what's the best carbon filtration type of media. There are different types. These are the filters that are removing the PFAS or PFOA, those types of chemicals at the water district. And so it's really important, but it's highly technical. And so we got 3 different bids, and I just wanted to make sure that we were getting the right materials and we were getting the right best price. So John, can we get you in here as our advisor?
He is on the phone. He can speak.
John, we're not hearing you, so you may be muted.
He's unmuted, actually. I can see his phone. He'll have to turn his phone.
Can you
turn your phone
can you
up?
hear?
Yeah,
can
we
you
can hear
hear-
you now.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So from what I gather is yes, we did receive bids for 3 different carbons. Actually, coconut, something called a coal carbon, an 8 by 10 sieve size, and a coal carbon, 12 by 40 sieve size. And through conversations with the manufacturer, they assured us that the best product for the removal of perfluorinated was something called the F400 or equivalent, which is a 12 by 40 sieve size, and that's what we're awarding on.
Is that all 1, 2, or 3?
2, I believe.
All right, so everybody bid on that. So so the Carbon Activated Corporation, and their numbers are lower in all 3 years. I also need to understand the years, why do we have this broken up into 21, 22, and 23?
So our intent with the contract was that we would have a carbon contract where the district could call out at any time, whether it be this year, next year, or the following year, and have a contractor secured to provide carbon at a set price. And we were going to be able to use this at 1, just in case this came up again and we had to have a change out. The Calgon Carbon Corp, they only bid on the coconut carbon.
No,
I'm sorry.
Calgon. I have Calgon. I have everybody bidding on alt number 2, right?
Yes. It was Carbon Activated Corp only bid on the coconut carbon.
I'm confused. Didn't you say the second one was the type that you wanted? The alt?
Jay, I'm not looking at the bid right now. Off the top of my head, I thought the second was the F was the one that we bid on, that we're trying to award on. I don't see the items in front of me right now, so
All right. 'Cause
If
the second
everybody-
one, across the board, the second one, if it's the second one we're awarding, the guy we're awarding it to, the company is the highest bidder, not the lowest bidder. The other two are both lower in all 3 years.
No, then that wouldn't be if there's and maybe James can help me with this one because there's a company called Carbon Activated Corp. They bid on only the coconut. So if they put a bid in for item 2, that's the coconut carbon, and we're not awarding on that.
Okay. So the one thing that EVAC Services appears to be the lowest on would be, I think, alternative 1. They would be the low bidder on because the Carbon Activated Corp did not bid on that one. And Calgon is lower in the other categories, but not that alt bid 1. So I'm guessing then it must be the first one.
Calgon XCAV Services, they were low bidder on the base bid, which was the Civ size 8, and they were low bidder on the first alternate, which was the what we're trying to award on the Civ size 12.
I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing only on the first, and maybe it's presented where the first one is the one you're talking about.
I don't know how they presented it. Let me just give me 1 second.
I'm pulling it now.
So I apologize, Jay. I wasn't prepared to jump on this, so I don't have the bids in front of me, and I'm in a car, so I can't really just pull them up on my computer right now. But I could assure you that what we're trying to award on to XCAV was the 12 size Civ, and it is the best carbon that they recommend for fluorinated removal.
All right, so the manufacturer and this company was the lowest bid in all. No,
Yeah.
Can you explain 2021 versus 2022 versus 2023? Why we have 3 different years?
Because if we need carbon in 2022, we can just call them up, and we already have numbers for it. We basically bid an annual contract for this year, next year, and then the 2023. So in 2023. If we need carbon, we can just call them up. We know the pricing. Pricing has been secured already, and it gives us an advantage over not going through the bidding process again. And it also gives us, in case we get stuck and it's an emergency, we can move real quick.
But I don't understand that. Like, why would we need carbon a year later after we went ahead and changed all the carbon? We ought to get years out of this, not 1 year, but 5 years or more.
If we need carbon at plant 3, it'll cover plant 3 too.
And is it going to be? We haven't designed those filters. Do we know if it's going to be the same filter?
We don't.
And you don't have the money either. We only have 240, Jay.
We have 240 that's being authorized today, right, Len?
That's all we have in the project, in this particular project. If you're going to do more work, you're going to need to appropriate or do something for more money.
Why are we awarding this for multiple years?
I think we were just trying to cover all our bases, Jay, and just in case. I don't foresee us needing it in 2022, but at least if we had the numbers, we could see it. We can look at it at the end of the year, end of 2022, and say, well, if we need it in 2023, we already have the numbers. We can then ask for it to be placed into the budget.
It's a far cry from 220,000 to the number that we're looking at now. I was shocked at that number.
I was shocked at that number too. So, and I was expecting a number in the 2s or, even up to 300 to to do the one filter, but when I saw the total number, I said, well, was there a mistake here? So the total number includes all 3 years, as if we're buying carbon in 21, 22, and 23.
I don't know how they wrote it up, the award. I just know that for 2021, this year, we need, I believe it was 220.
221.
Yeah, that's what we need for this year.
No,
We could, Jay, you can amend the resolution just to say, you're awarding this, but for a current limit of 240, and if you want to exercise it in the future, just, have to come back to the board for additional approval or something like that. Jim would have to come up with some language.
Yeah. Question, how did it go out to bid to, if you wanted? Did the bid encompass?
Oh, I
3?
see.
Yeah.
I see, because you might have gotten a better price
Yeah.
if you had the whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, hard to change it now. But
I'm still confused. James, maybe you could shed some light on this. How long does the carbon last in well field 1?
I think the all intentions of the multiple year was if we needed to do something quickly, swiftly at plant 3 without becoming into a violation where we had to get carbon right away. We wanted this multi-year pricing to see what we'd be looking at, say at the end of next year, if we needed to order carbon for plant 3. This wasn't intent to have to do multiple change outs at plant 1. Plant 1, we're looking at a 3 to 5 year schedule like we did originally.
Okay.
So we just wanted numbers to look at, okay, now we have this deferral going on at plant 3. If the New York State Board of Health tells us that we need to put filtration in at plant 3, now the board and the water district has a number that we can say, okay, we needed carbon tomorrow. This is what it would be for us to get that carbon to get at plant 3 to not incur a violation. We didn't want to appropriate the funds for the multi-year. We just wanted to have a line item to say, hey, that in 2022 or 2023, this is the number that we are looking at to order the carbon. At plant 1, we should be looking at a 3 to 5 year lifespan of the carbon. If not more, hopefully more. We don't know. We thought we were going to get more out of this original carbon that we got. According to John and the manufacturer, this has a longer bed life. How long that is, it's undetermined. But
My question, James, or to our consultant would be, when we put it out to bid, is the vendor expecting to get 3 times, the full amount of this award, or were they really only expecting the one?
They're expecting the one. This isn't the first time we've done a contract like this. Most water districts operate on contracts like this.
Okay.
They're expecting that if we need carbon in 2022, which doesn't look like we will, but if we do, or 23, is we first appropriate the funds through the town, and then we would give them a notice that, hey, we need this carbon, please have it delivered. And it just, since we already got bids on it, it kind of lets us, it lets us react faster.
it gives you the option, you're saying, John, basically
Yes, because
do it if you
even the
have to.
contract even says that, further award, they're not guaranteed
Right.
work in the further years. This is just basically to secure pricing.
It binds them to provide it, but it doesn't bind the town to use it, essentially.
Doesn't bind the town to use it. Similar to like some of their distribution contracts and chemical contracts.
But, since we don't, we haven't made a decision at all on field 3. So, so I just want to make sure, it looks this way from the bid, but I just want to make sure that this one company, since we're looking at the combined price for 1, 2, and 3 as the low bid, that they didn't have the high number in year 1 and lower numbers in year 2 and 3 to end up as the low bidder, and then we're going to end up paying a higher price. But it looks like in all the bidders sort of escalated the price by a certain percent for 2, and so they go up each year. by a percent or two. So I think we're safe there. I
Yeah,
get
That fix the price though. So I'm a little confused by that. Is that fixing a price for us so that we dip into that storage of carbon at the same price as it is quoted now? Or does that obligate us to pay going forward at a higher amount?
No, they have a price. They have a price in each year, John. So if it's the line that I think it is, it's 221,600 in 2021. And then it goes from 221 to 234, 234,000, then to 248,000, almost 249,000. So it just goes up each year. And each of
that's the part I don't really quite understand, because that's obligated, that's giving us a conditional payment if we have to make changes. If we're going to use that carbon in 2022 and 23, we're going to be buying it at an increased cost. So I don't see where the benefit is to us in that regard. Because the supply, I know the supply is getting short, nationally, and I understand that that's a built-in escalation. But if we're not going to need it for 3 to 5 years, I don't understand where there's any benefit to us for doing that.
I'll let John answer that.
Yeah, I think John would say that.
I think James hit it. I think James hit the nail on the head. Is we don't know what we're doing at Plant 3 yet. No, we don't. I agree with that. But if the last set of samples or 2 sets of samples ago, well 3.2 was operating at around the 9 parts. It's down to a 6.5. The last sampling, but we don't know what we're going to do. So if we have to mobilize in an emergency treatment system, we have the carbon pricing, and we don't have to go through the effort of. It gives us a little bit more leeway to react, and that's all we're trying to do.
All right, that clarifies it. Thank you, John.
And John, what would be the lead time? Say that we all of a sudden say, okay, the testing is telling us we need to order more carbon filter media. If we didn't have something in place, how long would it take to ramp that up to get it?
I think it's the bidding process that takes a long time. It's what we just went through. It's a few weeks on the street for public bidding. It's putting the contracts together, which takes a couple weeks, and then it's the award and contract execution period, which is going to take probably 4 to 5 weeks. So you're looking at you're saving 6 to 8 weeks by my on the low end.
And I think that might be important if we get a detection and it's coming into high season.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can I ask a different sort of question? This company, they're not reusing the carbon that's in there. They're going to remove all the carbon that's in there. And they're going to
remove it, yes.
They're replacing it with brand new carbon, if there's such a thing, unused carbon, right? Virgin.
Yeah, it's virgin carbon, never been used in treatment process.
All right, and then they're going to take away the old carbon.
They're going to take away the old carbon, yes.
All right, so that sort of leads me to my question: are they fully releasing the town in any way from any damage that could be caused by the materials in that carbon wherever it ends up?
Yes, they give us the manifest. We'll get all the manifests in place for the disposal, and it's either disposed of at a landfill, or they actually take it and they'll regenerate it and sell it to an environmental firm that will use it in like an environmental brownfield remediation. But we get all the manifests that say that it was all disposed of and transported correctly.
I just want to make sure that somebody can't, hold us responsible if it's improperly disposed of,
Nope, we have all the proper manifests that go in place, and we actually send them a sample prior to them disposing of it, so they know the correct place to dispose of it.
Yeah, Jim is aware of the question, basically, my concern. So is the board, because we had something similar happen to us. at a landfill in Georgia. So,
Yeah.
James, if you're done, Supervisor.
yeah, go ahead.
James, how many carbon filters do we currently have in the Hampton Bays Water District?
Just do it.
It's one system with two,
Vessels.
whatever it is.
Yeah, 240.
And it's all, and they're both at Wellfield 1,
Plant 1, yes, correct.
Plant 1. Okay, okay. And we're considering placing more depending on our results.
Yes, depending on what we get approved from the Board of Health, New York State, what they allow us to do and what they allow us not to do.
And this bid may cover those newly installed filters. That's right.
Doesn't it cover the filters, it'll cover the media.
Okay.
Actual vessels.
Is it fair to say that if we were to install a new system somewhere, that would come with carbon?
No.
No, you have to buy it and then install the carbon. Okay.
Yeah, and there's different types of carbon you could select as we're learning. And look,
For sure.
10 years from now, you may see carbon filtration at every well field throughout the county, throughout Long Island.
Jay, I think you're 100% right, because the UCMR 5 from the EPA comes out is going to be 20 more different perfluorinated compounds that they're not looking for right now.
Yeah, I think it's 25 actually, John. 25 plus lithium and some other metal that they're.
Yeah, so we're definitely gonna we're finding out where one exists, a lot more exists. So.
And does this type of filtration remove all the things that we're anticipating them requiring us to remove?
Right now, yes. In the future, with something called short chain perfluorinated, there may be a more effective treatment as far as resins go, like an exchange resin. And our filters are built where we can put resin in them if needed. But right now, the carbon is the most effective for the perfluorinateds that we are seeing. The PFAS, the PFOA, the PFNA, the PFH. All of those, the carbon is doing an effective job.
Okay, so then really the last question I have is, whether the resolution's correctly written, Jim. It sounds like we're not obligated to do anything in year 2 or 3, which is, that's fine with me, basically. So they're obligated to deliver at those prices if we do something in year 2 or 3.
Right.
And we're obligated to not go to another company in year 2 or 3 if we buy carbon, but we're not obligated to do anything in year 2 or 3.
Right. It's subject to an additional resolution for any other years that we exercise that option, essentially.
And John, you're saying that's typically how these things are done? So
yeah, and quite honestly, it's typically done that way, and other districts are operating with more carbon vessels. We kind of just did it to leave it what would be in the best interest of the district. And as a follow-up to somebody, and I'm not sure who else asked, but if we were to bid carbon filters at Plant 3 and construct them, we would also bid the carbon. And if the carbon was cheaper under that bid, we would go with that as opposed to this. But it also leaves us a thing where if our pricing is better, we're going to use our pricing.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that we could pick a different vendor in 2022 once we award this the way it's being awarded.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we'd be obligated. And I just want to make sure if we don't need carbon in 22 or 23, that this company doesn't say, hey, you promised us another $250,000 worth of carbon purchases.
No, that's not how the contract language is written.
Right. I haven't seen the contract, Jay, but it doesn't look from this resolution that you're mandated to do anything beyond authorizing you to enter into the contract for this year. It does reference the other 2 years, but
You want to
But it
throw
also
in
says you have to have a resolution to extend to those other 2 years. So everything's subject to
But
future.
does it say we're not obligated to pass such a resolution?
The town will allocate additional fund by resolution to extend the contract. I mean, I said, I haven't seen the contract, so I don't know exactly the wording, but I understand what John is saying, that it's industry-wide, so it gives the town the option to, like as Julie brought out, of cutting the period short in case we truly do need it as an emergency basis almost.
Yeah, it says the town reserves the right to extend this contract for 2 additional terms of 1 year, if doing so is in the best interest of the town. I think that's all it covers it. If we don't extend it, it ends at the end of the year, and it only covers costs for 1 year.
Right, just so it's clear it's the best interest of the town. So if the cost of these things drop to half next year, then we just go ahead and move ahead and do something else.
So we're in the second, in the first resolve where it says the town will allocate additional amounts for 22 and 23 by resolution. Maybe the town may, I don't know, maybe we should change will to may allocate additional amounts to extend the contract. The town also awards alternative 1. Part of the contract.
Yeah,
Are we
I like
working
that.
off of? I have 2 questions here before we get into the contract language. John, does this cover 1,4-dioxide?
No, it doesn't. 1,4-dioxane is not removable by carbon.
Okay, and that would be a different process and a different filter. And currently, the Suffolk County Water Authority has a patent pending for a filter that works on that. Is that correct?
1,4-dioxane, the best available technology is something called advanced oxidation process, and the Water Authority is doing some of it, as well as our whole number of suppliers in Nassau County, and actually Suffolk County. South Huntington Water District's building one, and so is Greenlawn.
And for this carbon, are we working it off of any other contracts?
No, sir. It's a sole contract. It's a standalone.
Okay. And how does this compare? You may or may not know this. How does this compare to what other water districts are paying for carbon?
It's right in. It's on. It's very similar to what other ones. It's within a dime per pound of what other districts are paying. Of course, companies that bid it a year or 2 ago are getting a slightly lower price, but for the contracts that went out this year, it's on par.
Okay, thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong too. The other water districts, I believe, they get a better deal when they order more volume, since we're not ordering as much volume. I know we talked about that. I think Suffolk County maybe get a little bit of better cut because they're ordering more volume of carbon, as we're just ordering a certain amount.
Yeah, it's the Walmart feature. You buy more, you get more, or you get better pricing.
All right, can we go back to the contract, the resolution language?
Yes, thank you.
Because I think we just need to clarify this resolve clause, Jim, where it says the town will allocate additional amounts, 22 and 23 by resolution. And that's really, if we extend the contract, the town will allocate additional amounts. But we don't know that we're going to extend the contract. So I just think that needs to be clarified to avoid any confusion. Maybe you should say, should the town extend the contract, the town will allocate additional amounts for 22 and 23 by resolution.
Right.
So let me.
If the town exercises their option to
Extend the contract?
Extend the contract for years 22 and 23, they will do so by a separate resolution. Something like that.
Well, also I'm looking, right now it says the town will allocate additional amounts for 2022 and 2023 by resolution to extend the contract. That's where it's that line is confusing.
Yeah, I don't mind the May there, as you said, May, okay, but
Or say, if the town at its sole discretion extends this contract beyond 2021, the town will all allocate
yeah,
additional amounts.
right. Let's see. Hmm.
Now, what if we extend the contract? What if we only extend the contract by 1 year? Are we obligated to extend by 2 years?
No. I mean, I haven't seen the contract, but I would think it's a year by year, according to what John was saying, which makes sense.
All right, I'm working on language.
Yeah, I'm trying to do something there.
I'm struggling a little bit here, but I have something like this, Jim. If the town at its sole discretion extends the contract beyond December 31st, 2021, the town will allocate additional amounts by separate resolution in accordance with the March 10th, 2021 bid.
I know.
Yeah. It's a little difficult because I haven't seen the contract. Are we bound? It's like kind of an optional 3-year contract, but if we do option, we're going to pay the price that's stated for each of the subsequent years, the 2022, 2023 years. That's I'm not unclear of. I'm not clear that.
John, do you know? It looks like from the resolution, we can do 2 additional 1-year extensions.
Yeah, it's at the set prices, right? Is that what it's saying?
Yes, it's 2 additional 1-year extensions, and it's based on the price that's submitted in the bid. So, yeah, if we extend in 2022, we're going to pay 2022 prices. If we extend in 2023, we're going to get 2023 prices.
So do you want me to say that language again, Jim? I think it covers it. So this would be in the first resolve. We take out where it says the town will allocate.
They told us to put.
And it just becomes a Hampton-based water district in the amount not to exceed $217,600 for the year 2021 period. And then it says, should the town at its sole discretion extend the contract beyond December 31st, 2021, the town will allocate additional amounts according to the March 10th, 2021 bid. Somewhere in there, we need to say by separate resolution.
Yeah.
So let me put that in. So should the town at its sole discretion extend the contract beyond December 31st, 2021, the town by separate resolution will allocate additional amounts according to the March 10th, 2021 bid. In accordance to with the March. Did you get that?
Yeah, basically.
Oh, so, Tommy John, this is your resolution.
Right.
So can you offer an amendment? So, and in this amendment, we take out the comma after 2021 in the first resolve and put in a period. And then we insert the language, should the town, comma, at its sole discretion, comma, extend the contract beyond December 31st, 2021, comma, the town by separate resolution will allocate additional amounts in accordance with the March 10th, 2021 bid by, what's this company? EVAC, whatever they are. EVAC.
Sandy, did you get that?
EVAC Services, Inc. So if you could just, make a motion to amend according to what I just read.
Yeah.
And did you get that, Sandy? I can't hear you.
You're muted.
Jim, can you provide that language to
Yes, yeah.
us, please, just so that we know we have it accurately?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
So yes, I'll make a motion to amend this resolution as per what was just stated in this meeting.
I'll make a second to amend it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So, so now I'll take a motion from Councilman Scavone to approve the amended resolution and a second from Councilman Martell. And do we have any, so that part's solved now. Is there any other issues that we need to fix, or are we good to vote on this?
Not with this, but moving forward, budgeting for carbon filters is going to be a significant expense for the water district in general. And, this didn't last, at least in my view, as long as we thought it was going to last. So it's just something that we need to keep in mind. Len, I know you're on the line here, moving forward, and we probably want to find out what that's going to cost over a decade, amount of time.
Are you going to want to include additional money in next year's capital budget? That's Jay. I don't know.
I would say no, because if we're going to amend the capital budget for filtration at field 3, we'll budget for the filter and the carbon medium together. We haven't made that decision yet. The numbers came down a little bit, but the health department is still, we're on a deferral right now. And you were sort of in the process of engineering the water filter, the carbon filtration, in terms of figuring out what's needed for that plant in case we have to pull that trigger quickly. The cost, as Tommy John said, it's quite expensive for the water district. It's not just the carbon, right? There's obviously other costs associated with it. We're testing every month. It's hundreds of dollars per test. The water going in, the water coming out from each well, the water in the system. There's probably other operational costs, utility costs. I don't know. We got to push the water through these filters that might increase our utility bills. I have no idea, but it's very hard to get an exact cost. And it takes time. Somebody has to collect the sample. Somebody's got to do all the, sit through these meetings like James, it's hard to get a real number, but we didn't create this problem. That is for certain. We didn't create it. you know, we do have an active lawsuit against the manufacturers of these substances, and you know, I hope we're able to recover as much as we can of the costs. There's, you know, the costs are significant, and you know, there's obviously the health, you know, impacts of these things. We're doing our best to make sure they're not in the water so that nobody is, you know, impacted.
Right. We have a capital improvement plan for the district going out 10 years, well, probably 9 years now. And, you know, this expense should be part of that.
Well, the original one does not include extra other than this.
Right.
It also
Capital plan. You're
doesn't
right.
the filtration. You know, you're just talking about filtration. There are other means to separate emergent chemicals out of water. A couple of chemicals were mentioned today. So, you know, you have to be flexible on this and fully understand that these costs are going to increase. And if we don't recover the monies that we need to recover from the producers of these substances, to your point, Supervisor, this is not something that was initiated by us. This was something that was done to us, and we're trying to recover those costs. But a lot of those costs are going to get sunk into more elaborate and more sophisticated methods of removing chemicals. And it's not always filtration. I just want to make that point, which may lead to changes in our infrastructure throughout the system at some point going into the future. You know, it's everything from plasma to, you know, high energy. There's just a lot of stuff that is possible, but not knowing what the next chemical is that we're going to deal with, just keep that in mind. So it's very,
and just to be clear, Councilman, I know you said we on behalf of the people of the Hampton Bays Water District, we're recovering that money for them and their water.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we have a motion and a second, right?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're done debating this. Anything else on the bill? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Approving as amended. All right, it's unanimous, and it is approved as amended. All right, I think that is the only item on the agenda here. Let's pull it up one more time. Yeah, that's the only resolution. All right, is there any other business? Seeing none, I will make a motion to adjourn this special meeting of the Hampton Bays Water District Commissioners.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, James. Thank you, John. And we are adjourned. We're going to have to start the next meeting, our regular work session, separately. So we're going to do a new pledge, and we'll let Charlie swap it out.
I am ready.
You're ready to go?
I am. Let me just change the heading. Yes, I am ready. Countdown.
You got the flag ready to go?
Yes, sir. I'm ready when you are.
All right,
Count it down.
all right, I'm just looking at what we've got coming up. All right, I see Janice is here. All right, I will count down. Let me grab the gavel. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on this first day of April, 2021. Please rise if you're able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Sunday, thank you for having a flag in your office there. That's
Yes.
the one to look at. I think there might be one in Jim's office back there too. All right, so let's get our work session started. Sunday, would you call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Schneiderman,
Here.
Councilwoman Lofstad,
Here.
Councilman Martell,
Here.
Councilman Bouvier,
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
All right. So hello, everybody. We're going to start with a technical review of test results and implementation of the groundwater monitoring protocol for the Bridge Golf Course from years 2010 to 2018. And we have several people joining us. Our Administrator for Land Planning, Janice Shearer, is here, and Marty Petrovich, who is our consultant on our water quality monitoring at these golf courses. We have Marty Shea, who is our Chief Environmental Analyst, joining us. Who else do we have coming in here? I see Ryan Murphy's here. He's here on a COVID update. We could do that first or second. Ty Fuller. And who else? Janice, who else is joining us on this?
Tom Cambreri is here. He is also the technical review team for the town. And I'm not sure, LeJean Barnes and Stuart Cohen from ETS are the testing company that we use. Also, I'm not sure if Greg Stanley and Mark Lesser are the superintendent and assistant superintendent for the Bridge Golf Course. But Marty and Tom will lead the discussion and go through their PowerPoint on their findings for the bridge.
So before we start, let me just tell Ryan, who's on, that maybe we'll do the COVID update after this. So maybe we'll bring him on. I don't want him to wait around for an hour while we do this. So,
no. Supervisor, that's fine. I'll have you on in the background over here, and whenever you're ready, you just let me know.
Okay, it could be an hour. So, all right. So, thank you, Janice. So, do you want to introduce this, or who's going to introduce it? Okay, good.
So, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Bridge Golf Course. For the sake of the work session, it's in Noyak. It's about 70 acres of irrigated turf, and it was created through a planned development district process. And so as part of that process, from 1997, they've been operating under a groundwater monitoring protocol. I believe the last update was in 2011, and in 2019, we then asked for the second 10-year or so review. So that's what's going on now. They've done their findings on all the monitoring wells, and we're going to hear from Marty and Tom. Also, this influences the protocols. So when, if they see something in the wells, then there's things that have to happen. So we follow very specific protocols, and then they make recommendations for amending those protocols when necessary. And I would like to thank everyone involved. They've been so thorough, and also the golf course themselves, Greg and his team, they very willing to do anything they need to do to comply. And so I just want to thank everyone involved now. It's not been my experience to be involved in this, so it's my first round in doing this, and their expertise is very much appreciated. So with that, thank you. And I'll turn it over to Marty Petrova. And you're muted, Marty.
Should be good. Well, welcome everyone. For some of you, I'm probably new to you when being on this project since more than 20 years, and along with Tom Cambreri, it gives us an opportunity in this period, usually 5+ years, to do an extremely detailed analysis. I do yearly evaluations of the golf course operation and the groundwater monitoring program, but we get a chance with these more intensive ones to look at the bigger picture, and especially over a time scale that we're looking at. And so this is some opening comments. This is probably one of the most monitored golf courses in the world. This program has been is as extensive as it probably could be, and it's working effectively. The goal is to minimize as much as possible any groundwater contamination. And so with a highly managed golf course, we can see that that actually does happen. And this isn't a fairly sensitive area, being a critical groundwater recharge area. So it's in everyone's interest to make sure that this program and this golf course is operating the way it should be. And so today, Tom Cambereri is going to go through the results phase. We basically, for time reasons, kind of condensed it down to the main points that we've observed. And then I'll cover the recommendations that we have to make changes in either the groundwater monitoring program or the management program for the golf course. And they are required to do a lot of reporting on things other than just groundwater quality. And this gives us that opportunity to recommend changes that the board can accept. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Before you do, I just wanted to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Marty. You all received a hard copy of the technical review report, and it's also posted on our website, just so you know. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to start us through the results part of our analysis.
Good morning. I will do my screen share here. So you should all be seeing the screen at this point. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for today's meeting. It's been a great opportunity, honor for me to work with the town of Southampton and through Marty on this project. I'm a hydrogeologist from Cape Cod and worked for the Cape Cod Commission for many years and was involved with nitrogen loading, wastewater management, and as a private consultant also with PFAS issues. And I'm a consultant to the town of Barnstable, where they've spent over $50 million putting treatment on 9 of their wells for the Hyannis area. So I understand what you've been going through there. But without further ado, let me get on to describing our report and findings. Our report's like 41 pages long. It's got 32 figures in it, 5 tables, and with 23 recommendations. So what we've done is to evaluate the monitoring that started out in 2001 with quarterly monitoring program every year until about 2012, and then it became semi-annual. And there's annual reports every year, and it's not just monitoring. It's also a review of all the golf course operational data, irrigation, fertilizer, pesticides, management decisions, and so weather stations. The whole gambit is here. And so, as Marty says, the work that the bridge and its consultants, environmental turf sciences, has done that we're reviewing has been a phenomenal job. So here is the bridge golf course for located up at the top of the moraine, and here's a kind of a color band. As a hydrogeologist, I like to get into a little bit of this is color bands of time of travel. So in the circle, that's about where the golf course is. And the blue colors there up near the top are indicative of time of travel of 100 to 200 years to the coast. And in this case, we have groundwater flowing up towards the north or the Noyak area. So that's the big hydrogeologic picture here. And let's go onto the bridge. And the bridge is a championship par 72 course. And there's about 4 acres of greens and a similar amount of tees. 35 acres of fairways, and also with rough. So during our review, it's about 75 acres. There is changes that happen, decisions, moving fairways and things like that. So sometimes these numbers are about change a little bit, but overall, you see that there's about 75 acres of irrigated turf, and as the picture showed that we were looking at, 158 acres of native vegetation surround this whole area as well. So the course and the beauty of the course is portrayed in the fact that there's just enough turf for a great game of golf and a lot of beauty in the native vegetation. The irrigation information, I'll just go on to the slide here. This shows the amount of irrigation over our review period. Remember,
there's something, I'm sorry, there's something blocking on my screen. I don't know if it's just on my screen. It says live captions and subtitles. Is that on your screen or just on mine?
It's on mine too.
It's in somebody just, if you could just click got it, I think it would go away.
Let's see, I'm not sure.
That's better.
You can see that better? That's better for you?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because some of the text was blocked at the last screen. So.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's not good. Okay. Then we are good to go. And so here's the amount of irrigation that is applied to the course, and the amount of average amount of irrigation is about 28 million gallons a day. As I indicated, there's a weather station here. The amount of evaporation and and transpiration are estimated, calculated, and so we do comparisons to the amount of irrigation that's needed based upon the evapotranspiration needs of the turf. And it turns out that the amount of irrigation is actually about 4 inches less than is actually needed if you do the calculation. So the amount of irrigation is reasonable for a course this size, and we find similar amounts for courses as well. Janice talked a bit about the beginnings of this with the groundwater monitoring protocol as a condition of approval by the town of Southampton. And the protocol is fairly, it was a very formal document that also has approved, with the tri-party, with the town, Suffolk County Water Authority, and the bridge. And part of that is the sampling. So sampling commenced in 2001, and with background samples as well, even before the course was built. And there's currently 12 acting monitoring wells on the course also. So of the course, when I think there's been like maybe 360 samples of for nitrogen over the course of this period. Here is a map of the monitoring wells that are sampled semi-annually and annually and through the course through the year. And you see the many of them are located up towards the what would be the south. The top of the page is south, and the wells are measured for depth to water and a number of physical parameters on site, and the depth to water on this site is over 100 feet, 100 to 120 feet. These are lines indicate the fluctuation of the water table. The water table actually ranges from 19 feet at the highest part above mean sea level. That's the height of the groundwater lens at the groundwater divide, and at the bottom of the site goes to 10 feet. This is a groundwater table map of the site, and you see there's about a 17-foot contour running through here. I think you could see my cursor running through that way, and then the other
could I ask you to go back to the previous slide and explain that again?
Surely.
I liked it. I just want to.
Yeah. So this shows, every time they go out to sample the wells, they're taking measurements, depth to water, and what we do is we convert those to groundwater elevations. So you have a surveyed elevation, and the actual well might be 200 feet above mean sea level, the ground elevation. But then when you put your well in, the well is going down about 100 feet. So they're taking measurements. So the depth to water would be 100 feet. And then you take that measured elevation and you relate that to the surveyed elevation. And then you could come up and say, well, this well is located, the water table is at 10 feet. And so these fluctuations that you see are basically caused by seasonal climatic variations and droughts and or periods where there's lots of rain. So where you see the water table is fairly consistent in its fluctuation from one well to the next. So these are probably high precipitation events during 2007, 2008, a drought period in 2009, another higher period in 2011. And there's this interesting recession of groundwater, long recession of groundwater that's occurring here. And I haven't looked at that as see how that relates to the other groundwater elevations elsewhere, on the South Fork. But it is kind of a curious thing. I'm not sure exactly, why we don't see the significance here, but it's basically weather driven and climatic.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a snapshot of one of those occasions and of measuring these. And so we can contour the water tables. And so this is the top of the water table is 17 feet above mean sea level all across this line. And down in here, let's say, pick this one, this is like 13 feet here. And one of the reasons I got into hydrogeology is very simple, is the groundwater flows downhill. So it goes from the southern part of the property to the northern part. And groundwater flows perpendicular to these contours, and that's what's shown by these arrows here. And there's a groundwater divide that runs here. So that's very curious that we found that. So when you think of the South Fork, all the groundwater from this point goes to the north, and all the groundwater from this part goes to the south. And so that's the reason why a lot of these monitoring wells are located up near the northern part of the property. It's because groundwater is flowing in that direction over most of the property. So in evaluating these in our 2011, we did two major reviews. One was in 98 we did one when the property was being permitted, and then 2011 was one of our first major reviews, and this, what I'm talking about now, is our review for the last 10 years. So back in 2011, we said, well, geez, there are some wells that are really responsive to the nitrogen that's being put in on the course. We're going to call those turf response wells. And then there's other wells that, geez, they're not moving at all, and their concentrations are the same as the background that hasn't moved. So we're calling those the ambient wells. So they're not seeing much impact. And then we had a couple miscellaneous wells here. One is the perch well that I'll talk about, and then there's another well that was put in for monitoring of the facility, the turf management facility. So the groundwater wells, as I mentioned, presently under this, they're being sampling. They're going out twice a year for the semi-annual events, and they're measuring 7 wells: the turf wells, 4 turf wells, and 2 ambient wells, and the perch well. And then every other year, they're adding some more wells to it. So instead of measuring 7, they're measuring 12. And there's a couple of other turf wells that are out there, and another miscellaneous well. So, and then there's a 4-year comprehensive testing as well, and that is all consolidated into this protocol sampling sheet. And here's all the wells that are listed here. Here's the categories, whether the miscellaneous, turf, or ambient. This is the nitrogen. This indicates what is happening for nitrogen, and this is for pesticides. And we're sampling these semi-annually. The other ones are annual. This is the goal. Some have 2 part per million goals. One have less than 1, over 5, but the goal is 2 overall. And then we have management responses, if in case it goes over these concentrations of nitrogen. And these outlines some of the outline the pesticide sampling that is going on semi-annually every 2 years, and then with a comprehensive sampling event every 4 years for even more exotic types of compounds, and it's conditional upon what they're using, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's go on to the fertilization. Here's the course again, and there's the average amount of fertilizer is about 19. Well, it's right there, 1,924, and here's the amount of nitrogen that's been applied to the course from the beginning to now. And so you see some of the higher amounts of nitrogen during its build time. So this is like when it was being built, and they were letting the turf grow in. So these are the higher amounts during these periods. And then through our review period now, we're basically flatlining all across here. So the average is about 1,900 pounds of nitrogen fertilizer. So you're going out with a giant bag of let's say fertilizer, but only a certain percentage is actually nitrogen. So we're only counting the nitrogen pounds here. And then according to the the permit, there's a level of 3,000 pounds. So it's all below 3,000 pounds. So let's talk about some of the monitoring results that we have coming up. As I mentioned, the goal for the course is less than 2 milligrams of nitrogen. We've got the management threshold for if a single well goes up, there's a need and a response for a fertilizer restriction. And this is very conservative because the state and federal drinking water standard is 10 milligrams per liter. And at the time of permitting, we were also the town was also concerned about nitrogen loading to the coastal embayments, ponds, trout pond, and that. So we arrived at a goal of 2 milligrams per liter because we know dealing with nitrogen in the embayments is a big cost item too.
So Tom, this is Councilman Bouvier. If I could just ask a quick question. So all your fertilizer is nitrogen based, it's not phosphorus or other nutrient?
Oh yeah, no. There's other. There is phosphorus in it as well as probably potassium, and the Greg, the superintendent, could fill you in on that. But
I'm going to chime in, Tom. No, basically, he's not putting down phosphorus and potassium. There's soil tests being done, and if the levels get low enough, but primary fertilizing is almost 100% nitrogen.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing with phosphorus is doesn't move in the groundwater. It really gets attenuated, and so it doesn't move that much. Let's say it does move somewhat, but it's not a big issue. Phosphorus, if you're around a pond and you're putting fertilizer in around a pond, that's close enough to a pond. That could be an issue. But way up here on the moraine,
only in as much it's an indicator. So I'm just curious if you were actually measuring what those loads were. That was the basis of my question. But I think it was. Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's a graph of each actual nitrogen concentration in the wells over time. And so starts out in the beginning, fairly, you can see an increase of nitrogen concentrations during this period, this grow-in period. And basically, we're pretty much at a mature course that's running across, and the concentrations are running through. They're all kind of less than, the average is less than 2, and the overall average is about 1.5 that we're seeing in the turf response wells. So this is good news. We are seeing some increases here, and some of our recommendations for these particular wells are specific to these wells, and looking at increasing the frequency of monitoring of these biennial wells, so that we can get a better handle on what's going on here. We take all that information and we can plot the average concentration of those wells for each year. And so this basically shows the average concentration increasing from, the beginning of the course. So that's what we would expect. Again, look at, the concentration up here is 2. And we're basically flatlining across this area. So we've entered the build of the course and a very mature kind of a situation where the nitrogen concentration really isn't changing that much, and so we're kind of a steady state mature situation.
So I'm sorry to interrupt again. Just
trying to. It's good. It's good to have questions.
If you could, can you characterize what the runoff amounts are from this course? Have you ever looked at that? I see these numbers are quite low, particularly in groundwater, which would be understandable. But I'm wondering if you've ever looked at what is being carried on in terms of runoff, and that gets back to my phosphorus question again. If you monitor that, or if you have a way to monitor that.
Yeah, what we've done is so let's say we're all on sand here, right? So there's really no runoff, going anywhere. It's all going into the water table. And so the amount of nitrogen that's we know how much nitrogen is applied to the course, and then we can see the amount of nitrogen in the wells. And so we can kind of back calculate and say, well, of the amount of nitrogen that's being put on the course, how much is getting into the groundwater? And this is the work that Marty Petrovic, her colleague at Cornell, has done all the research on this over many years. And if we do calculations, we're looking at kind of a percent of leaching, let's say, of I think we're talking around like 10%. I'd have to look back on that to see, but it's somewhere around that amount.
That's saying that
of leaching.
90% of the nitrogen being applied is being absorbed or fixed by the vegetation, right? On the course.
Exactly. It's being uptaken by the turf, which is exactly what you want to do. You want to put in just enough, as Marty will say, just enough to keep the turf healthy, but not so much that it leaches through. And so I think that's where they've gotten to a good point here. 10% really
the
low.
Really good. So I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you for that.
This is Councilwoman Lofstad. I just would like you to clarify one thing. I see on this for the milligrams per liter on the left-hand side. Is that 2 up the top your goal? And then I'm looking at the linear average, which is steadily moving up, and will hit that if it keeps going like it is.
Yeah, Julie, that is a great question. And the thing is that we're averaging this all this annual data from 2000, but it's kind of it's a little bit unfair in some respects to include what's happening here. And I'll show you on another graph coming up. Actually, maybe I'll shoot to that right here. Here's this same graph going across here, Julie, and this is the amount of fertilizer that we saw earlier. So we're putting on, tons of fertilizer, like 9,000 pounds, 8,000 pounds in the beginning of this when we saw this increase. But now we're only seeing like 3,000 pounds of being put on, and we're seeing the flat line here. So actually, it's one of the cases in our recommendations is that to get a better handle on what the averages are is to start from a more mature section here. So that's why it's the line would alert you to that for sure. But if you take this into consideration, what was happening and the amount of nitrogen is basically less than it's about 2,000 pounds. This is kind of a flat line.
So, and just on the slide that you had forwarded to, the two are diverging, not converging. So what would be the reason for that? The difference in the blue and the green?
Well, in the green, this is at the beginning of the course. Let's say there was no course here. Or it was just being built like in '99. So there's no fertilizer. So there was no fertilizer, getting to the groundwater at that point. But then they started, when they start putting in this amount of fertilizer, there was a response. And so these are the turf response wells. And we saw an increase from 0.4, up to 0.6 or so, 1.6 or something in this area. And then, so this is, the amount that was caused by this initial amount. And then the steady state situation is that, well, of the amount that they're putting on, it's not getting any higher. If this amount stayed up, well, then I think we would have seen the green curve go up at a greater rate. But the amount of fertilizers come down, and it's kind of approached the steady state.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see the green line doesn't have a 2019, which I would have liked to see that because the bottom blue line went down. So
Yeah,
it's
2000. This is a comment. I think 2000 was approaching 2,900 pounds of nitrogen, so it's a little bit higher than it was in previous years.
So I'm sorry, the 2019, the green line would be up to 2.9?
No, the blue.
The blue line, sorry.
Would be here.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, so the blue
but the upper green line, that doesn't have a 2019 dot.
Because of the review period, when we started this review, we only kept it to that. The data's there, we just haven't put it in there.
Okay, thanks.
For the next 5-year review, I guess. So to summarize again, the average concentration is 1.5. Only 14 of the 108 wells, only 13% were above 2 milligrams per liter. None were above the management threshold. And these are the ambient wells here. Basically a flat line going across. We did see this increase, and this well, there's an ambient well that's now seeing some increases, and we have a specific recommendation to deal with that. Again, for an ambient well, this is less than a half a part per million here for this for the average of the ambient wells. So it's still way below, but we just have a little increase here, and we've have a specific recommendation on that. Here's kind of the line for the 2008 to 2018 data that we have, nitrate versus pounds of nitrogen, and it basically is kind of a flat line. There's not really much of a correlation in this, but it is kind of a flat line. And then for the one of the only there's a much better match here. We looked at all the variables, let's say nitrogen, fertilizer, precipitation was one of the ones that had somewhat of a correlation, so that the higher amount of precipitation that would occurred on the course, the higher the amount of nitrogen that was found for that year. And that kind of makes sense. If you have more precipitation, you might be leaching more nitrogen in that case. But really, there was not much of a correlation with other data in regards to that matter. Well, if we leave the monitoring well, that part of the program also had the installation of lysimeters, and lysimeters. Those measure the chemistry of the soil moisture. So these devices are located, just below the surface of the ground, and they're very difficult to deal with. But you basically apply a vacuum to this device when you want to sample it, and it pulls in the soil moisture, and you hope that you have enough of water to sample. And after our last technical review, there was 5 of the 8 original lysimeters were dropped, and 3 new angled lysimeters were installed. This was an angled lysimeter going in on the course, so this would go in and end up underneath the green. And so we had 3 angled lysimeters from, I think, 2012 that we reviewed as well. Here's the lysimeter data. The average concentration. So this is like all across this. There were some high peaks here of nitrogen that were found in the soil moisture just below the ground surface. But the average concentration was 3.7. 90% of the samples were below a 5 part per million threshold. Only 8% were between 5 and 10, and 3% were above a management threshold. In other words, we had for lysimeters, instead of 2, we'd have 5, because it's a lot closer to the source of the nitrogen, right below the turf. And so you would expect there to be more. And the resampling of any of these high thresholds showed pretty subsequent decreases. And what we found is, like, some of these high points, we mentioned before that there's been some modifications of the turf areas from time to time on the course. And so it just so happened to be, this lysimeter and that were near where these turf modifications were happening. And so they responded, and so we saw that. But otherwise, we really didn't see much response in the lysimeters in regards to the day-to-day or month-to-month turf management going on the course.
And Tom, I just wanted to add one part to that, is the corresponding groundwater wells, however, didn't reflect these increases in the lysimeters.
It did not reflect it, is that what we said?
Did not reflect it.
So why is that now? Is there some uptake within the soil layer of nitrogen?
I mean, it's a good question. I think it's a very hard one to answer, why there isn't this link. And there's still, because these, even though they may be several feet down, there can be some of that deeper water before it gets to groundwater. May still, if it gets dry, it may come back up. There's dilution. There's probably not much microbial activity as it gets deeper that could change the form of nitrogen. But what it pointed to, and that'll be one of our recommendations, is the lysimeters weren't serving as an early warning system for us, and therefore really have very little value from a groundwater protection standpoint. And that's, with all these years, it was a good kind of research concept, and the researcher in me wanted those in there, but it didn't do very much for us to as an early warning system to protect groundwater. That's what we really thought it would do for us.
Thank you, Marty.
So Marty, just to follow up on that, you know, if I'm seeing this number right, it's around 70 milligrams per liter at that moment. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you look at the causation of that within the is that new turf, replacement turf, patch turf? I mean,
that particular lysimeter was near when the golf course expanded its practice area. That there was several acres of land being disturbed, and this particular lysimeter picked it up. So it's really good at picking up surface activities. But again, the well that was below that, the groundwater well below that, didn't reflect this big increase in nitrogen being found in the lysimeter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you have to remember also these lysimeters are sampling from a very small location as well, versus what happens with that soil moisture to go down 100 feet and enter the water table, and then being picked up by a monitoring well. So
yeah, no, and
there are some challenges.
I totally appreciate that, because those local changes are caused by all sorts of reasons, and environmental reasons, humidity, deposition, all that kind of stuff. It's just curious that what else it was indicating to me. The question was answered, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
So seeing some of the takeaway points, I think Marty's talked about some of those. There's 6 lysimeters. They do produce an unpredictable volume of water due to the localized area. So when the samplers go out, they have to coordinate with Greg, and Greg, make sure you're irrigating this area where these lysimeters are, because we need to pull out some of the soil moisture. This is basically sand, and it doesn't hold a lot of water. So some of the lysimeters are reliable, others are not. And in some cases, if there's not enough water produced, then instead of nitrogen, they get sampled for pesticides. And in some cases, there's not enough water for any sample at all. So some of these have been kind of unpredictable as well, and a challenge.
And the design of these lysimeters, how far below the surface do you like to see them?
Oh, I don't know, anywhere from 2 to 5 feet, something like that, 6 feet. They actually can be installed in clusters in other areas, like 1 to 3 feet, 3 to 6, 6 to 9 as well. Marty's done a lot of research on these things using these babies.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the angle of your machine there and wondering how deep that thing actually went, if they wanted to get it below the out into the heart of the green.
Yeah, there was.
You know what you're doing. I get it.
Yeah. There's some calculations that we use, and even some trigonometry to get the screen, at the right spot, underneath the green there.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
That's right. The cosine or something like that. Well, we'll leave the world of nitrogen and how that was being measured in the monitoring wells and lysimeters to looking at pesticide application. And during the permitting of the course, the bridge and its consultants, environmental turf sciences, there's Stu Cohen and his colleague LeJean Barnes, who are in on the call here today, did an extensive risk assessment and review of pesticides and how they migrate through media and their toxicity. And so the approved plan for the course allowed up to 32 specific pesticides. And in our review period over this last 10 year, Greg's only applied 5 to 9 pesticides each year to maintain the turf conditions. And so it's a remarkable feat of turf management. I think that's going on up there. And most of these aren't for insects, for pesticides or the herbicides, but mostly fungicides that are being used.
Do you apply pesticides to kill ticks?
No, I don't think the tick management is being done up here, broadly through turf management program. No.
So to that point, one of your recommendations are the replacement of 2 pesticides. Are those the fungicides as well, or are you going to get to that that replacement recommendation of the 2 pesticides? I'm assuming they're contained in the 4 to 5 that or the 4 to 6 that you're currently using now.
You're correct, and they are fungicides. And as you'll see, we go through the, especially the groundwater sampling, that there's probably a good reason to replace those if possible.
Okay, thank you, Marty.
But we'll get there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So this is a chart out of the protocol, and it basically lists the a number of pesticides that are used or were used, and the lab method, what its quantification limit is, its reference point, and basically these are the numbers are in parts per billion, and these are references for health guidelines, and so some of them are around 50, and others are more sensitive, due to their toxicity and mobility. So there's some ones that are lower here, and so we'll be talking about some of these compounds in the next couple slides. And then we have a resampling trigger. If it's found at a certain rate, it needs to be resampled, and if it's found at a management trigger, then the of course looks to go into some type of management response. And if you look at the reference point is 50, the resampling trigger is 5, an order of magnitude less than that, and as well as the management trigger. So this is how serious the town and the bridge were in putting together this protocol and this concern about pesticides. This is a broad time frame chart all across, and these are the number of pesticides hits that occurred. And so out of I don't know, hundreds of analysis, these are some of the ones that came up in the in the wells. And so early on, there was a hit of tridemenol, which is what is part of tridemofon, and that compound was ceased being used. And then some of the paclobutrazol was found, and that's not being used anymore. And then we're seeing some small hits of some of these other fungicides that occur from time to time. And we have one well in particular that's a problematic well. It's a 2D, which is up towards the south of the course, is one of the more shallower wells. And so these are basically what we're finding, but recalling the rates or the reference doses of not doses but health advisories of 50, we're well below those levels. And so the pesticides have been detected only 76 times in groundwater. Nearly 89% are below half part per billion. 8 samples were above, but a lot of these samples, when they were resamples, came back down. The highest sample hits were chlorothalonil, but there was some indication that there might have been some cross-contamination or sampling issues, or they could be real, but we haven't seen anything like that again. So kind of an outlier detection there. And as I indicated, most of the detections occur in this well and in the groundwater, and the myclobutanol and propiconazole are the ones that we see time and time again, although these concentrations are going down as well. And this basically kind of repeats what I had said earlier, is that this is the frequency of detections of all the samples of 76 detections. Most of them are really low levels and the parts per billion. And then certainly like 80, what did I say, 89%, call it 90% are below a half a part per billion. And so this, again, is a bit of a repeat, but only 7 detections were above 1 part, and that was all propiconazole. And these detections have decreased, and the New York maximum contaminant limit is 50, with a health advisory of 700. So all these detections are well below the state guidelines for water quality. And these are in the lysimeters, and so even the lysimeters, we're seeing very low concentrations of detections in the lysimeters. Much below the 5 part per million, and there's 1 part per billion, very, very low. So that concludes my piece of the covering the results, and Marty's going to talk to you about recommendations. And you'll have to unmute yourself, Marty.
Sorry. Are there any
I have
questions?
a couple of questions before we move on. Just something I'm curious about. Tom, you're from Cape Cod. Does Cape Cod have an unconfined water aquifer as well, similar to Long Island?
Yes, very, very similar. Glacial origin, unconfined aquifer.
And did you find a perched water table under this parcel? You made mention of a perched well, and I'm wondering if that was okay.
Yes, indeed. That was. Thanks for mentioning that. We flew right by that. There is a perched well here. So let me just see what my notes say about that, because I wrote a couple things down. So this is kind of the highest concentrations. Remember, we characterize these wells, and so when we sum up the turf response nitrogen concentrations, we're not including the perched well. So there was a lot of angst about this particular well. Now, when I mentioned the depth to the aquifer here, the productive aquifer is 100 to 120 feet. This well is screened at about 30 feet, 32 feet into the aquifer. So it just happens to be that they encountered this silty clay lens of material that was holding water way up, 90 feet above the water table. And so it was there. So, okay, it was part of the program, and its measurements were, they kept going up and up. And so we did have, in our 2010 review recommendation to evaluate this in more detail. So, and one of the things we were concerned about was how, how broad is this? Not so much broad, but how much water is in this perched aquifer? And so it turns out we said, well, and if there was a lot, well, maybe that nitrogen could be pumped out and actually applied somewhere as a kind of a fertigation on the course. But so when the ES&T folks went out to evaluate this and pump it off to get a better sample, well, they got enough for a sample, but it's not productive water at all. So, if you tried to put a well in here, for drinking water, you wouldn't be successful. It's basically a saturated, silty area that the water seeps into the well, kind of like almost like a lysimeter, a giant lysimeter in this area. So So that's it's unlikely that the water that's being collected here is going to be transmitted to the productive aquifer 100 feet down.
And
it's,
which which well number was that?
That's the the perched well, PW1. And
right.
so if I could go back here.
Got it. I'll take a look. Yeah.
Yeah, there it is right there, up in this area. And it's kind of interesting. It is near a drainage pond, and some of this area does kind of collect some drainage. So it could be, part of that is a reason for its increasing. We've recommended, despite the fact that it's is perched and all that, we've recommended to continue to monitor this, not only for nitrogen but for pesticides, because it shows what is happening in this upper zone, and potentially also as an early warning for if any pesticides show up here. Well, that's kind of an indication that there's leaching going on, and maybe some of those should be looked at. And I think there was something called pendimethalin that was found there, and the Corps stopped using that as well.
So that's a little bit new information, because I seem to recall talking about this before, and it was being described as a sort of a clay-bound lens. So you guys have looked at it a little more deeply. It sounds more like a saturation issue in that one area. But I'd understood that it was causing some grief at the time because it was skewing results, because you were basically, this was water that was essentially stagnant underground. So has that changed? I mean, I like the idea. I'm really glad that you're continuing to monitor. I understood that you guys had stopped doing that because the results were so consistent. Do I have that?
Yeah, you're right. I think you've summarized that correctly.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where I left off here. I don't know if there was any other questions before Marty gets into the recommendations for us to answer. Okay, Marty.
So we looked at all the parts that we looked at of either managing the course or its impact on water quality. There were some things that stood out with us to improve our ability. Two things: improve our ability to evaluate this. So you'll see there's some reporting parts of this, as well as then change in the actual groundwater monitoring protocol. So the first one is that we need to continue taking water samples on the background well, and it's more just for water tables measurements than it is for any kind of water quality measurements. Originally, the background well was thought to be a true background well, but once we saw that the groundwater contour map, you can see that it was being influenced by some turf in front of that. So we quickly kind of dropped it as its label use as a background well. You'd love to have some well that would reflect that, but you can see the way the groundwater flow is after where the groundwater divide is. It's actually being influenced, not being at the top of it. Probably if it were located right below the groundwater divide, you might say that could have been a background well, but it doesn't serve as a background well for information of areas that aren't being affected. Where are we? And so again, there are a number of these that relate to reporting things for our things. The golf course is required to provide data. The data has been in a hard copy version of, very difficult and time consuming to take that and use it as we did in this analysis. So all the climatic data, both in the non-play period of the year, which is about 5 months, and then the 7 months during the growing season, that needs to be submitted, and it should be submitted, as you'll see in some of these other ones, as in a digital format, so that whoever does this review in the future will make it a lot easier to be able to implement those. One thing is, as we've kind of seen over the years, that the golf course isn't a stagnant body. It does change. They have significantly reduced the amount of turf area in some areas, shortened the number of the holes, revegetated with native vegetation. And so every time that happens, to get a more accurate impact of what's going on, that those areas need to be mapped and then provided to the town anytime there's any change like that. We still believe there should be some, limit on the amount of fertilizer nitrogen fertilizer that's applied. And it does give some flexibility for the superintendent to modify that based on growing conditions. Currently, their applications on greens and teas are at 1/10 of a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per application. There may be 15 or 20 of those applications, very low rates. The fairways do get higher amounts as individual applications, but it gives the superintendent the ability to adapt depending on how the climatic conditions are at that time and the use of it. But there still should be this 3,000 pounds per year limit applied to the golf course. The next one again is just giving all the information in a more digital format, including precipitation, evapotranspiration, fertilizer applications, pesticide applications, which we see in an annual report from the superintendent, but then all the field notes that are being put together during sampling, and any of the information provided by any of the third party parts of doing the actual monitoring part of it. Again, this would have helped our process a lot by having that. So we wanted to make changes to some of the monitoring components in some of the wells. So we're recommending that the biannual turf wells, monitoring well 4R, 7, and 8 be sampled on a routine semi-annual basis for nitrogen until they fall down. These are the ones that have been kind of creeping up a little bit. So until they fall below 1.5 milligrams per liter, that they should be sampled. And after that, then they could go back to an annual basis. And so that would be one of the changes on what to do with certain wells. And it's also recommended that biannual monitoring well 6 be sampled semi-annually for 2 years or until the sampling results from the previous 2 years fall below 1 milligram per liter. Again, because we're seeing some of these things changing, we'd like to tweak those ability to analyze those and to see if things are changing in the right direction. Pesticides should be analyzed annually when nitrate levels greater than 1 milligram per liter for 2 years or until the sampling results from the previous 2 years fall below 1 milligram per liter. So it's getting very detailed on how to tweak a few of these wells and how often they should be monitored and what they're linked to. Because if you're only analyzing for nitrates and not pesticides, in this case it's good if we see nitrate levels going up. That may also indicate that pesticides could be also leaching. Number 8 is that the miscellaneous well 1S will change its designation to a turf well. And it starts getting sampled again routinely on a semi-annual basis for nitrogen, or until it falls below 1.5 milligrams per liter, then go back to annual sampling. Because this is one of the wells that was starting to, even though we consider miscellaneous wells, it now looks like it's more responding to turf than it did previously, turf management, that is. So we're part of what with the perched well, as we still advise sampling for it, but the way the protocol was written, that if you get above a certain level, you have to pump it off and resample it. And so this was done several times over the years, and it didn't change the numbers at all by doing that. So it seemed to be an unnecessary process of pumping off that well and resampling again if it gives you the same number. And it was done so many times. So this is one of the recommendations to change for that. Now, if we start seeing nitrate levels, I mean, they're getting up toward 10 milligrams per liter in the perched well. But then that will start reverting back, if it does get above that, revert back to semi-annual testing for pesticides and for nitrogen. And that the study director, which currently is Environmental Turf Services, would undertake and submit a turf management remediation plan if that does happen. Because there must be something locally that's going on right around the perched well that would give that, would lead to something like that. So the 11 is, or 10, it recommends that specific conductance data be recorded, and that again be shown as a timeline and reported annually, so we can consider using that information also. So number 11 is adherence to the protocol. At time to time, it becomes, as like with the perch well 1 with pumping the well off, really should be considered to be changed relatively quickly. The bridge did request the town for an amendment to the perched well, and that still hasn't been acted on. So something minor like that with the perched well, the pumping off component, may be better to be done more in an administrative way versus a town board motion to make these minor changes. So we're suggesting that the town board consider giving these minor changes approval to the town and planning development administrator instead of going through the full town board. And as we can see, some of those things could be changed really quickly if they had to be done. Yeah, Tom's running the screen slide here, so I have to give him a nod every once in a while. So we wanted to, again, do more on reporting parts. That's what 12 relates to, which we've kind of recommended several times in this process. It's currently not done in a digital format that would make it easy for someone to do that. But one of the biggest difficulties is dealing with looking at pesticide applications, because the golf course is required to annually submit to DEC a report. It talks about what the product name is and the amounts that were put down and what kind of, whether it's liquid or granular, and trying to make any kind of sense of that took a lot of time to be able to tease that data out. So just as a small administrative change that the golf course itself would do those calculations and submit that to the town. So it'd be easier to add up pounds of actual material applied, not gallons of product, which it's hard to compare apples and oranges and apples to apples in that case. 13, that it's recommended the sampling of biennial turf wells, 4R, 7, and 8, and the miscellaneous well that now we consider a turf well, 1S, and the ambient wells and W6 be tested for pesticides to be increased annually in the September one. These were on that biannual basis, but now to move them to an annual sampling in September, reflecting pretty much the applications that would occur during the growing season. And that on 14, just that there are some method changes that should be considered for if these these are herbicides, 2,4-D, dicamba, and mecoprop, are hardly used on the golf course, but if they are used, then they would be put in as part of the testing program anytime those are applied again. And for this one method, method L306, they were used to measure paclobutazole and tridimethan, and you can see they haven't been detected and haven't been applied for many years or detected for many years. It should still be considered that method for the 4-year review, comprehensive sampling review, but not for any annual or biannual testing as they have been in the past. It's a very specific test for those two materials. So since they're not used, they haven't been used, it seems a reasonable thing not to consider applying or testing for those unless they've applied them again.
Just a quick question on that,
Yes.
Marty. Is that the pesticides have sort of a half-life and you haven't applied it for a certain period of time, it would be very unexpected to detect it after a certain period of time?
Yes. Off the top of my head, it's interesting. The actual fungicide triadimethan is applied, but it quickly gets metabolized into a material called triadimenol, and that's what was detected. And it was detected early. It is pretty commonly found in other testing protocols because it is fairly mobile in the environment. But both those, paclobutazole, I think both those have half-lives less than a year. So it's not as surprising that since they haven't been applied, they haven't been picked up. The one surprising one, however, is microbutanil was only applied once to the golf course. And you'll still see it occasionally found in monitoring well 2D. It seems to be a compound that again, they only applied it once. It was picked up in that first sampling after it was applied, hasn't been applied since, and it every once in a while still kind of shows up. It's a kind of a puzzling thing. I'm not sure why it's still there. It doesn't have that long of a half-life, so it is kind of surprising. Yes.
No, you answered my question. Thank you.
So as we indicated after looking at the lysimeter results, we don't believe they're serving their initial purpose of protecting groundwater, and we believe they should be discontinued. It's not adding any information. That we can see that if the goal is to protect groundwater quality, it's certainly not doing that for us.
May I interrupt for just 1 second? In a previous slide, it says that lysimeters act as an early warning to what is going on. So I'm not sure. It seems to be contradictory.
Well, that was their initial premise, that you would think something shallow is first going to be picked up more shallow, and then if you get into groundwater, obviously being significantly deeper, that it could tell us if something's moving, then we can make changes at the surface. But since it doesn't relate to what we're finding in groundwater wells, and it's more reflective of what's going on at the surface, that it doesn't help us in anticipating as an early warning system to change management to protect the groundwater wells. That initially we thought it would work that way or could work that way, and it's not providing that for us. So we see very little benefit to continue testing if the goal was to protect groundwater quality and serve this early warning system for that.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that, the monitoring wells that they're using now were put in obviously prior to the subwatershed study. Have you had the opportunity to overlay that with the current location of the wells to either confirm or otherwise characterize the water movement under the course?
Well, I think yearly Environmental Turf Services kind of what I wouldn't say redraws the groundwater flow map, but they use the groundwater data to look at to determine a flow map. And so that's done kind of every year, taking that current year's data for groundwater levels.
So they were using that to inform the subwatershed study? Is that what I'm understanding?
I believe so.
If I could, it's likely. I had seen some of the water table data incorporated into one of either the county or USGS report, and so I think it's likely that it did. And
we did. Hi, this is Janice. We did give the data to Suffolk County when they were doing the subwatershed plan.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And so the last one of our recommendations is to, as soon as possible, drop the use of propiconazole and chlorothalonil, since they are the ones that seem to be showing up. Within the next 2 years, there have been a number of new, these are fungicides, number of new fungicides registered since 1999. To do that, to replace these with a new material, the bridge must go again through a risk assessment for a new pesticide before it would be approved. That again, a town would have to approve that replacement. And so we believe this is an easy goal to attain. The hardest one is chlorothalonil because of how its mode of action and how effective it is against many diseases. If there isn't a suitable replacement, that we would believe it would be still advisable that the bridge could use, because they use it mostly on greens, to use it on the 4 acres of greens, and that would result in about a 90% reduction in the amount of a treated area if they can't find a reasonable replacement in the next 2 years. And then when there is a reasonable replacement, they should stop using it. Okay. So we believe we should continue these 5-year technical reviews, maybe on 5 years. And it usually, because of the time it takes to do it, we set it out in 2019 to actually do this current one, and the time it takes for us to do it and to get it to you and to in this case the bridge. It sometimes that makes that period longer than 5 years, but I think it's a good idea based on, as you see, how comprehensive that this review can be and what it points out, that it will make making any changes to either the protocol or turf management of the course advisable. And again, just to reiterate that we think for minor changes, maybe it isn't necessary to go through the whole process of amending, having both town board approval and Suffolk County Water Authority approval to make minor changes. And just as a plug that the bridge recommended bridge will still continue to reimburse the town for services to monitor and review the implementation protocol on these 5-year technical reviews, because it's not currently stated that way. So that's all we have, other than for questions or other comments that anyone would like to make.
Are there any more questions for Marty or anyone else? Thank you, Marty. It's very, and to Tom, yeah, very comprehensive, very thorough and technical. And I thought the town board had excellent questions on this. So so the next step would be, I guess, Janice, do we need to do this by resolution to modify the plan according to the recommendations?
Yes, I believe so. And also, and I mentioned on the chat, Mr. Fuller, Ty Fuller is here from Suffolk County Water Authority, I believe. And we also need the Water Authority to sign off. So as they mentioned in the beginning, it's the town, the county, and the bridge themselves who agree to the amendment. So if you're good with it, we could put a resolution on. We would then ask the county to approve the amended protocols. And we have, I believe, Greg is here representing the bridge. They're in agreement with the changes. Is that so, Greg? Yeah. So we can put a resolution on changing the protocol, with everything that was discussed here, assuming everybody's good with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Great.
Yeah, I think I think it's a real model of the way it should be done. So I appreciate the work. It's a tremendous amount of work. I know, Marty, and I absolutely would recommend going ahead with that.
Okay, we'll do that as soon as possible, so that way they can move forward.
Marty, I have one question. In terms of the Golfet Bridge versus Sabonic, I think in Sabonic the greens are lined. There's a vinyl liner. Are we seeing any appreciable differences in pesticide detections where we have liners under the greens?
Not really. And part of the underlying system goes into a pond, and actually the pond gets tested every year see what's coming from the greens. And there occasionally just a sample or two that may have any detectable levels in it. And the greens lysimeters that were relatively new, there were very few detects in that also. So I think there's not much of a difference, but it is a different kind of way of trying to protect groundwater by doing as they've done with the capture and then reapply that water back to the golf course.
Okay.
And that'll be kind of up on the agenda. We're finishing up the Sabonic one, so you may see Tom and I in the future coming in with that report, as well as recommendations to change any recommendations to change their protocol.
Okay. All right. And there was one other comment on the chat, just a clarification from an earlier slide that north was south, not the other way around. So I recognize that, but it was said wrong, and the top of the screen was north, I believe, not south.
What the groundwater flow map actually showed showed north.
Yeah, I'm just saying that more for our viewers. Like, we can all see the chat, but the viewers on channel 22 don't see the chat. So just want to make sure that they're aware of that. All right, anything else? All right, thank you all for this very thorough and informative presentation. We have a great deal of confidence in the team, so we depend very much on your abilities to help us protect our precious drinking water resources. So thank you so much.
Can I ask a question? I was wondering when the resolution would be finalized.
Lejean, we can do that for the next meeting if the board is okay with that.
Which is?
April 11th.
April 11th.
Okay.
Can I ask on that? One of the recommendations was to empower you, Janice, to make some sort of minor changes to the plan without going through the town board. Is everybody on the board okay with that? And Janice, are you okay with that? And are the lawyers okay? Does that follow the spirit of the original resolution in terms of having the town board as the oversight board for these types of things?
I think you'll still always be the oversight board. It's more like just small changes that, in my view, if it were me, it would be most protective. And I think if they didn't like what I was saying, they would always appeal to you. So
right. Does the PDD allow for such delegation?
it just says we have to create a protocol and this is the protocol. So it doesn't get into those details.
If the resolution requires that only the town board, or has to approve all changes to the groundwater monitoring plan and IPM for this property, then we might have an issue and might have to amend the PDD to delegate some of that to you. But Christine, did you want to weigh in on it?
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, I'll work with Janice. We'll go over the wording of the original resolution that set it up. And it may be that it gives Janice the leeway to be able to work out those amendments. If not, then we'll have to address whether or not we need to bring it to the board and have.
Relatively minor and administerial, so it shouldn't be an issue, but
we'll check it out.
Okay.
And next,
I just want to bring up that our next board meeting is April 13th, not the 11th.
Yes, that's a Sunday.
Right. Right.
That was an April Fool's Day joke, right?
There you go. Yeah.
April 1st. All right. Which is today. Okay. Thank you for that, Tommy John. All right. So April 13th, we'll have this on the agenda. All right. Thank you all. And we'll let you go off and we'll continue on with our town board work session.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Bye.